about her death is, well, there's been obviously an apparent overdose.
The first scene that I'm directing Hayden in, we are in the middle of a camera rehearsal, and I'm at the monitor, and Hayden's about 15 feet away on set, and I feel Brian hovering over my shoulder. And he leans in and he says to me, "You let me know what you need her to do. I can get her to do anything." And my immediate reaction to that was, what the but what I said was, all right, because what else do you say when you're in the middle of a rehearsal and somebody you didn't hire says that to you? In fact, it was a direct attempt to control, and it was presented like this bizarre power flex. We could all see it, and we all wanted to help.
That is director Griff Furst on Instagram, referring to Hayden Panettiere's then boyfriend leaning over his shoulder, stating, "Just tell me, I can get her to do anything." Correct me if I am wrong, Dave Mack, Crime Stories investigative reporter, but was he on the scene when Hayden Panettiere is found dead?
Yes, ma'am. He was right there. He was staying with her. They actually traveled together and were in Greenville, South Carolina at that Airbnb together when she passed.
The first scene director Griff Furst ever shot with Hayden Panettiere. She was about 15 feet away on set in the middle of a camera rehearsal. And then he felt it. Brian Hickerson, her boyfriend, hovering over his shoulder, leaning in, not asking about the scene, not asking about the lighting, not asking about the performance. What he said was this: "You let me know what you need her to do. I can get her to do anything." Before we go deeper into what the evidence actually shows, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Nest Media, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the facts. That was the moment the mask slipped. Furst's immediate reaction was, what the fess? But what do you actually say to a man who has just strolled onto your set, a man you didn't hire, a man whose only credential is that he's dating your lead actress, and announced that he owns her, that he controls her? The director called it a bizarre power flex. But flex is the wrong word. A flex implies strength. This wasn't strength. This was a man so profoundly threatened by the mere sight of his girlfriend being directed by another professional that he had to reassert his dominance right there, in front of the whole crew. He was marking his territory. I can get her to do anything? That wasn't a boast. That was a warning. This is the image you need to hold in your head. A woman at work, a professional on a film set, and a man who had been arrested multiple times for beating her, leaning over the director's shoulder, telling him he can make her do anything. This is the visual anchor of the entire tragedy. It's not just a red flag. It's a map of the power structure that eventually swallowed her whole. The director said it himself. We could all see it, and we all wanted to help. But spotting a red flag and physically pulling somebody out of a toxic situation are very different things. And isn't that the heart of the problem? We all spot the red flags. We all see the controlling boyfriend hovering on set. We see the pattern of abuse. 4 arrests across multiple incidents, a conviction, threats, and domestic violence that left her face red and swollen. We see it, but we don't pull people out. Because what can you do? What can anyone do? He is just not the kind of person that you would want directing the life of a co-worker or a friend or a mother or a daughter. That was Furst's conclusion, and it was chillingly accurate. Let's look at what was actually going on behind the scenes. Hickerson was not just a leech, he was a convicted felon with a history of violence. As of May 2019, he was arrested on suspicion of domestic violence against Panettiere. In 2020, he allegedly punched her in the face on Valentine's Day. In 2021, he pleaded no contest to 2 felony counts of injuring a spouse or cohabitant. This is not speculation. This is a matter of public record.
Exactly what he is saying. Brian Hickerson has been arrested at least 4 times across multiple incidents involving domestic violence and drug-related charges. And, you know, Nancy, this even came up in the recent past, in the last few weeks, when Hickerson actually went before a judge to have his record expunged, and the judge referenced an interview he did that you were just listening to with TMZ, where Hickerson is obviously under the influence. But backing up his history, Nancy, May of 2019, Hickerson arrested on suspicion of domestic violence against Hayden Panettiere. Charges were initially dismissed when prosecutors couldn't secure a material witness, but later covered a broader 2020 indictment when he pleaded no contest to that one in 2021. In Wyoming, in 2020. He was arrested on Valentine's Day for misdemeanor battery after an alleged domestic incident. August 2025, just over a year ago, arrested at a bar, Barney's Beanery. That case was later declined for prosecution due to insufficient evidence. And then we have August 6th of 2025, where Hickerson was arrested days after the Barney's Beanery incident and booked on a misdemeanor count of being under the influence. So Hickerson has a long record. But Nancy, there's something really important that Hayden Panettiere said in a statement in 2020 in talking about Brian Hickerson. She was speaking out publicly about, surviving domestic abuse. And she actually said this, quote, "I'm coming forward with the truth about what happened to me, with the hope that my story will empower others in abusive relationships to get the help they need and deserve. I am prepared to do my part to make
And
sure
just
this..."
3 days before Panettiere died, a judge denied his request to have those felony charges reduced to misdemeanors. 3 days. So when the scene shifted from a Hollywood set to an Airbnb in South Carolina, and Hayden Panettiere was found unresponsive, we are asked to believe that this controlling, violent man was just sleeping in another room while she died. That he just happened to have Narcan on hand. That his brother just happened to show up to wake them for lunch.
Yes, Nancy. So this timeline is according to Hayden's mother, Lesley, who claims that she spoke to police and they relayed information that Brian told them. So according to what Brian said to police, at 10:30 in the morning, Hayden is getting ready, putting on her makeup. They had plans later that day to meet up with his brother, Zach, to go to lunch and play some golf. And so he then steps out. We don't know when exactly he comes back, but apparently we don't even know if they exchanged some words or what exactly happened. But at some point, they lay down to take a nap. Now, that time period is really important because when they take a nap, were they high? Had they used drugs? We don't know that yet. And then what we know next is that sometime around a later 1 o'clock to 2 p.m., Zach shows up and he's knocking on the door because they're not answering his texts and trying to, reunite with them to go to their plans. And then that's when they found Hayden sadly unresponsive.
His brother gave us a statement that he texted Brian and Hayden on that Sunday morning, last Sunday, and didn't get a response, went to this Airbnb where they were, and then found Brian, who had just woken up, and Hayden laying in a bed. And Brian then administered Narcan to her.
From our friend Harvey Levin at TMZ. Okay,
The
Renee
mother, Lesley Vogel, couldn't accept it either. I don't understand how you can take a nap next to someone who is dying and not realize something is wrong. She believes Hickerson knew her daughter had died and constructed
I want to hear
a
your
story.
analysis.
Well, there are so many story holes. One is that if you're calling and texting and your brother doesn't wake up, but you knock on the door and then he wakes up, that's a little suspicious. You said earlier that Hayden Panettiere was putting her makeup on and then they decided to take a nap. I can tell you right now, no woman, especially an actress, is going to put her makeup on and then lie down for a nap, and unless she's extremely high, because that's going to ruin her makeup. The idea that she was in a chair and then she was, on the bed, but also why talk to Harvey Levin? Zach has a long history with his brother, I'm sure, covering for him, rescuing him, knowing about his history, knowing about his relationship with Hayden, knowing about abuse. This kind of abuse does not happen with one beating. It happens with isolating the victim from people in their lives, loved ones, family members, then going into their work life like she's on that set, then occasionally beating them. And to go back to Zach and the scene, if Hayden was indeed one of his best friends, if she was confiding in him, he's torn between his brother Brian and Hayden.
And she's right to ask the question. The investigation is still active and no one is a suspect. But the DEA, the feds, they've swarmed her home with a search warrant, looking for the supply chain behind this
Podcast
overdose.
On the Couch with Dr. Bethany. Jump in, Bethany.
Nancy, I'm going to guess that the DEA was not doing a welfare check in West Hollywood. They were swarming her home because there's a supply chain behind this overdose. And let's Let's think about what a supply chain could be. It could be drugs being produced from overseas, coming over the border, or it could be doctors in Beverly Hills, in West Hollywood, around the country supplying opioids. What was their drug of choice? Opioids. Who addicted her to opioids? Someone on a set when she was 15 years old. They were together for 8 years, she and Brian. And it seems to me that she might have done what we call falling out. Dr. Maroney talked about that this week. And I call it in my practice nodding out. When somebody comes in and they're high on opioids, they will start talking and then all of a sudden they just nod out, like they go back to sleep. They go to sleep and then they rouse themselves out of it. They start talking again. They don't even realize that they nodded out. That's a sign of opiate abuse. Who prescribes opiates? Doctors.
Because when an abuser has the power to get her to do anything, that power doesn't just disappear when the cameras stop rolling. It follows her right to the very end.